Do you know Army?
Do you know Army?
Do you know Army?
Do you know Army?
No, I thought we started with names.
This is
Because
exactly
we
why
said-
I was trying to
we
go over the
said-
intro.
We literally said, do you know Army? And you said, that's the outro.
No, she
No,
said.
now you know Army. Okay.
Oh,
You know what, y'all?
We got it.
No, wait. Moving on.
I'm Sarah.
And take two.
No, girl, we didn't.
Okay, we know Sarah.
I'm Mako.
I'm Zoe.
I'm Mimi.
That's Juana. I don't know where she is today, but she's physically here. I don't know where she is mentally.
It was me that messed up. Yes, I'm Juana.
We went to the Permission to Dance concerts, and
Yes, we fought hard and we got there.
this is what we're here to talk about today. We're going to divide it into two parts. The episode after this will be specifically just about the concerts because there's just so much to say about everything that was going to have to be split into two parts. So where do we start? Where do we start with the trip to LA? Just so y'all know, we're from Austin, so we are traveling from Austin to LA. And some of us have been to LA before, so like Mimi.
Yeah, I've been to LA
Well,
before.
the first time we went to LA was, well, not Mimi because she used to live in LA, but the first time we went to LA together was for the LA concert, the Last Love Yourself LA concert.
Mm-hmm.
And
When the pop-up store.
when the Line store first opened, and we stayed in a different part of LA, and we traveled around in a different part of LA than what we did 2 weeks ago.
Now, here's the thing. So we traveled around, meaning other people drove. And we were able to just chill in the back seat.
Yeah.
I chilled in the trunk.
So what she's saying is that when we go to these concerts, we typically look for hotels or venues near the stadiums. So this stadium was in Inglewood.
So to clarify earlier, it was only my first time to LA, so I knew zero to nothing about LA,
Oh, yeah.
including nothing about Inglewood.
Well, okay, so the reason we brought up
The difference.
previous
In the location.
the previous trip to LA is honestly all I remember is the concert and the Line store and walking down Hollywood Boulevard.
we went
Because
to
someone
Disney,
else
Disney.
and we went to Disney
Disney Village.
Because someone else drove for us. Someone else was like, okay, I'll type in the directions. They got us from point A to point B. We were focused on the concert and that's it. So it was kind of a very tiny, precise trip. This one, we went to 2 concerts. It was 4 or 5 days. I drove and it was quite different.
A very different experience. The scenery that we saw, the location that we saw in Inglewood and the surrounding area was vastly different from what we experienced 3 years ago. So as far as our experience,
So super fast. I always, whenever we start stories, I like to start at the very beginning. We had parking at the Austin airport, which I really am thankful for our Austin airport. It's super awesome and clean
really
and
is nice.
functional. It was really great. So we had parking. We dropped off our car. We were shuttled to the airport. We got there early. We checked in. Getting through security was fine and easy and everything. And we were ready for Starbucks because the sun hadn't risen yet. And, we needed to wake up. So we got into the Starbucks line. We were just waiting. One person walks out and says, "Oh, I don't think we're going to open today."
Yeah.
No one showed up. And we were like, "Oh, all right then. Thanks for letting us know after we've been waiting here for a few minutes." So we walked on, found our gate, chilled, found a little cafe, got some stuff, ate. The rest of our crews, 9 of us total. Right now on the podcast, it's just 4 of us. But 9 of us total who were going to the concert. Of course, we saw the Army there. And
everybody, a lot of people at our gate were Army.
Yeah.
And Army always looks after Army. So, for example, when we went to get the stuff at the cafe, the Army that we met at the gates watched our stuff and we watched their stuff. We were all very awesome sauce and whatnot. So then we loaded the plane and then we ended up in LA. Go ahead.
The LAX experience was fine. That was my first time at LAX, and that was
It was a lot of people.
Freaking crowded.
It was
crowded.
So
like no room to walk.
Many
Crowded.
people in one area. our airport was like lackadaisical. Like, it was plenty of space. I mean, we were spread out, chill. It was quiet.
Maybe it was
nice.
Texas size. I don't know.
Granted, you know, we were there before the sun rose, but even I've been to the airport when the sun was up high and at its peak, and it was more spacious. Maybe it's Texas size. Good point, Sarah.
Yeah, it's
But
But
you know
LAX
how
is extremely busy.
pandemic, quarantine, you know, you stay by yourself, and then you're kind of like shocked when a person's right next to you that you don't know. So going into that airport, it was a shocker.
It was body to body. It was a lot of people in there.
A lot of stimulus.
Yeah, and I wanted to get out of there as soon as
I
possible.
really did want to get out. It was just too many people for my liking.
Well, and then, excuse me, trying to navigate our way through it. Some of us went to go get the luggage that we had checked, and then some of us stayed to try and finally get Starbucks.
That was a mistake.
And then we got separated. Then we ended up having to find one another again. So yeah, I mean, the crowdedness kind of added to the time that was consumed there. But then we also picked up our vehicle there. So we had to take a shuttle to pick up our vehicle because we decided to get a vehicle instead of using public transportation because, lo and behold, we were staying in Inglewood. So what a lot of us didn't know and discovered about Inglewood was that if you're not used to public transportation, that is not the place you want to submerge yourself into public transportation. So the 9 of us decided to get a vehicle. We got our vehicle, and then we're headed out.
Finding it was quite difficult. Just anyone who plans on going to another LA concert and has never been to LA, and that's what we did. I wouldn't fully depend on asking people questions, because I asked 5 people the same question and got 7 different answers from 5 people.
Evidently was a precursor to LA hospitality.
Yeah, maybe we're a little spoiled with the Southern Texas hospitality kind of thing. And you know what? We were also spoiled because our last concert was in Chicago.
And Chicago.
Was
Chi-Town. Oh, Chi-Town had it going on.
I mean, it's just a world of a difference. Yeah, everybody just looked irritated if you even wanted to talk to them, even if that's their job, like that they're there to answer questions. And for me, the smog was so weird to me because I'm just so not used to not being able to see the sky when I'm outside. Yeah. So I see these pretty palm trees, but when they're like against this background of just smog and I can't tell what time of day it is, it just felt very weird.
It was quite strange, and our allergies definitely peaked while we were in LA, because it's just completely different from Austin, Texas.
It was a different vibe. Yeah, it was a very different vibe, but you know, we're there for concert. We're not there to visit LA.
I'll put that on silent. But either way, it was an experience, and we made it through. Now, I said at the beginning there were 9 of us on the trip, so 9 of us in one vehicle, which as a driver, it was perfectly fine because I had my own seats. But in the back, it was crowded. Everybody had to get used to being
I don't recommend traveling in big groups, Army.
It was quite difficult. But it helped it be a little bit more manageable financially. So, we struggled to find the shuttle to get to our actual vehicle. So that took a minute. Then we finally got our vehicle. Y'all, we almost died.
Trying to
drive in LA.
Traffic signals are only suggestions.
Lanes do not exist.
Only suggestions. But so we got our last Army individual. She had a flight later than all of ours, and so we picked her up, got her at LA, and was headed to the hotel. We got to the hotel, and that was not a bad experience at all. We had a couple of different rooms checked in. The rooms were already early. That was a plus.
Yeah, it was.
We were able to get in, get our stuff in there, get settled, and then then we go check in, and then we went to the Lion store.
Yeah.
So what we knew about the Lion store from all other armies was that that's going to be an experience and a half. Well, the first time we had gone to the Lion store, we waited a solid hour, and that was when it first opened, and that was the pop-up of the Lion store. We waited a solid hour 3 years ago when it first opened. This time we were prepared to wait. We got there, and the line at the Lion store 3 years ago was around one side of the block. The line this time was around most all of the block.
It was the entire building, like
yeah.
the entire building.
Yeah.
The entire block.
Yeah. So we went around the opposite way of the building to find the end of the line.
Wait a
That's how
minute,
much
but before
of a
we
line
get
it
to
was.
that, I have to tell you that this is all in the same day, people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is all the same day. Now our day
Yeah.
started what, 3:00 that morning?
2 a.m. in the morning.
2 a.m.
Yeah.
that morning, and now we're knocking on. What time did we get to the line store? Probably
The line store opened at
It opened at 11. We got there about 30 or 40 minutes
30
after
minutes
it
after,
opened.
yeah.
so around 11:30ish or so.
Yeah.
Before noon.
Before
Yeah.
right at noon. Now I'm starving at this point.
Yeah, we haven't
We
eaten
were all
anything but
starving.
Starbucks.
starving.
Because we couldn't get to any place that would sell us food.
Well, I was asleep in the vehicle when a decision was made not to eat. I'm just going to... A decision, people, was made not to eat. So I'm mad and I'm frustrated, and we're walking to the line store, right? I mean, it's a ton of people in line. And I didn't know that the path that we were taking led us through, what was that, Jimmy Kimmel?
Jimmy Kimmel Live. Yeah.
So we actually walked through the Jimmy Kimmel, like,
Parking
set
area.
area. And as I was walking through, because I was lagging way behind. My crew was way ahead of me. I was lagging way behind because I was going through some things mentally. And there was a nice young gentleman, and he kind of nodded his head and said good afternoon to me. And I was so mad and frustrated, I just walked right past him. But then I felt bad about it, so I went back and I apologized. And I said, I'm so sorry, sir. I'm just a little frustrated because I'm hungry. And I was like outvoted on eating and da-da-da-da-da. And he gave me some food. He gave me like a little muffin and a thing of water.
So apparently while I was trying to find the end of the line, Miyako was making friends and having a feast.
I was. So shout out to Jimmy Kimmel, whoever that was. Kimmel. Y'all know his name. Shout out to JK.
Okay, no, just keep going.
Just keep going. I don't want to go there. Let's just keep going.
Shout out to Jimmy Kimmel, whoever. Kimmel.
Oh my God, keep
Oh,
going.
God.
I can't
Can
say
you
his
say the man's
name.
name right?
But Jimmy Kimmel is not who. The guy. Shout out to him. And thank you so much for the food and the water. I appreciate it. It literally saved me. Thank you.
The rest of us had to kind of fend for ourselves. So it was a little tough because once we did finally get in line, I will be honest, I can't say I can speak for everyone, but I didn't think it would take more than an hour or two. I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why we as a group kind of decided that we'd just go grab something to eat afterwards because we only expected to have to wait like
Which
tops a couple
ended
hours.
up being a great idea because had we waited and gone to get something to eat first and then gone back, when we left finally, 3 hours
Yes,
later,
it got worse.
That line was even worse.
It did get
and
worse.
the merchandise was slim to nothing.
So we get in line. A couple of things happen in different sections because there's 9 people, so it's different sections of what happened. In one section, some of our crew was right next to this dude who.
He was rolling a joint in line.
He was rolling a joint.
He stood his ass there and rolled that joint.
People in that crew have lung issues, and I don't even like the smell. Like just straight up and sideways. I don't care if it's in LA, Africa,
I don't care
Japan.
if it's
I don't care where it is. I don't like the
medicinal.
smell. Don't put it in my area. Be respectful.
It was so disrespectful.
So finally, Mako asked him to stop, and then he did. Respect.
well,
Thank
no,
you, he
out
did.
of respect, she didn't ask him to stop. She asked him to just go across the street or something. Can you just can you go across the street? Can you direct it somewhere else? And he was like, oh, no, yeah, I'm sorry. And I think he ended up
Yeah, and he
stopping.
put it out. He put it out. So, but anyways, that same individual apparently was asking other people in our crew, so how much do you think this stuff will go for online? So clearly, he was there just to
resell stuff.
literally to resell stuff. Like, why are you in this line for 3 hours and you just want to resell this stuff to poor army? Who can't come
Ethics
themselves?
aside, he must have been not very smart. Because
No, he wasn't. He was by himself. He didn't do no research. he didn't
Asking
realize
people.
and he bailed before we even got to the front of the front door. So he bailed 2.5 hours in. He was like, I'm outie.
So that's one section of our crew. Another section of our crew I was in had to pee. And armies in front of us said, yeah, if you go around the block, down sideways, left and right, you'll find a Target that will, has a bathroom, I'm pretty sure. So we went there. We ran because we didn't want anyone to question whether or not we were still in line. So we ran, we got there. Target said, no, it's not public. Target was in a little facility, and we went to the next stop, said no, it's not for public. So we went to the next stop, said no,
That's
it's
something
not
that
for
I
public.
don't experience in Austin.
Yeah,
Finally,
that
turning
that
away
has
for
to be an LA
bathrooms.
thing.
Finally, we went to one place. There were some security officers saying, yeah, if you go there up the street, round the corner, sideways, left and right, there's a place that if you buy something, you can use the bathroom. So we ran again because it's already, you know, our people is holding our line and spot. So we go there and we just sneak in because there was no one at the front. It was a restaurant. We just sneak in, we go use the bathroom, but I was parched after all that running. So I bought something anyways. At a discounted price because the brother was there and he was like, no, I don't understand why we have to charge you to use the bathroom because all the other bathrooms are locked down. But anyways, that was an experience, and we finally got back. The line moved into the shade, so you know that gave us hope.
That's
we moved
it
a
too.
few
The sun
feet.
was out that day, guys.
It was a good experience in the line as far as we got to meet other armies from
Oh my
different parts
gosh,
of the country.
so many
So
armies.
that was a good experience, and that's the kind of experience we had before: meeting other armies and bang-tanging right there on the street, and just having a good time trying to beat the heat and get
Shout
up
out
to
to
the front.
Monster, the drink, the people
Yeah,
they had
they
their
came
truck.
by and
They came out
giving
and-
out free drinks, giving
free
out free
drinks to
energy
armies.
drinks
They
to
did.
armies. And then other people, every other LA person just stopped and asked questions about what is this line for? Hey, what are y'all? And they would
So
stop
many
in their,
people stopped
they
and asked
stopped
what
in their
this line was
cars, not
for.
just people walking down the street, people in their cars, and they stopped wanting to know what this line was for. Then there was a big tour bus that went by, and evidently there was an army on that tour bus sitting at the top. It was a double decker. And she started filming, and she shouted out to Army, and she started
we
the
did the whole
fan
fan
chant.
chant, yeah.
And she was on the street and in the double decker tour bus. So I mean, it was a really good experience in that
Yeah.
respect.
As we
Once
went
we
through,
got
things
to
energized us.
the front of the line and we were able to go into the store, we thought it was extremely organized because they were just letting X amount of people in at a time, which they had done before. But this time it was you only have X amount of time and then you've got to get what you want and get out of there. So we got in there, and we had been being told for at least the past hour and a half before we even got to the front door that there's no more merchandise. And then some people would say there's lacking in merchandise. However, they're trying to refill and stock as we're in there. And sure enough, when we got in there, this was not the same line store we had experienced.
It really wasn't.
And it was in the exact same building. It was the exact same spot, exact same location. However, even if we had gone, and Mimi put it in perspective for me quite well. Even if we had gone to a different line store that had been up for 3 years, I think it would have been better than this one because it really had no upkeep. And it really had they had taken some of the huge big line characters that were in there. I think we mentioned this in one of our other podcasts. The day we visited the line store when it first was a pop-up 3 years ago, the day after, the guys went to that very same line store. They toured that line store. They signed the big line characters, each of their line characters. They put their signatures on it. I was expecting to see that when we went back into the store. They had removed all that. They had taken all of that out. Now, they had replaced it with some big line characters, but it was not quite the same at all.
It was a thrift store version of the line store.
Let me just call it was the Dollar General version of the line store.
It was a very disappointing that they didn't. The upkeep was horrendous.
Yeah,
the upkeep was horrendous.
So, another big thing that I don't know why no one is learning. If you know Army is coming to your city, and you know Army is coming to your store, why would you be short on anything?
Now, sure enough, like Sarah mentioned, they didn't have a lot of time to get a lot of stock in, and all of this is authentic line stuff. So it comes from Korea, so they didn't have a lot of notice that hey, we're going to be bombarded with 60,000 plus, because individuals that weren't even going to the concert were just like, yeah, I'm going to go get some stuff. People, they didn't have a lot of time, so I understand being low, but they were ridiculously low.
It was a lot of empty
And
shelves.
I think that the logistics is an issue for me because, to some extent, of course, the stock is out of your hands. That's the higher ups, right? It could just be whoever's in charge of that just didn't order them enough, and so the store itself, it's not their fault. But I think it was really crappy that first of all, we had to rely only on other Army to even give us updates on what was going on, right? So whenever the employees came around, it was literally only to just tell us to clear the walkway. Okay, they didn't really care about the fact that we were all starving and like standing outside in the sun for hours on end. They really didn't care about about the well-being of not just Army but just people who were doing that. And we had to rely on other Army to come by and say, hey, this is how much stuff is left. This is how long I had to wait in line. Like, this is about how far you guys are from the front. And I'm grateful that we had, the Army experience for that. But like we mentioned, in terms of hospitality, I would say do not expect that.
At this point, and granted, we all know the Army is spoiled because the boys spoil us and Big Hit spoiled us growing up. But at this point, at least if I was running something or if you were running something or if either of us was, you know that 60,000 plus is coming to your store. Even after that first day of experiencing it, you make accommodations.
That's
one
it
of
too.
our people in our crew, it's not easy standing up for 3 hours. It's not easy for anybody standing up for 3.5 hours in the heat in LA with smog and then trying to shop and then not having eaten, right? So that's why I gave a shout out to Monster. They drove up and gave us free drinks. But there should have been some sort of accommodation, like this is an area where you can sit down, or this is a water station, or because it was a serious thing. It was like an actual event of people going to your store.
And with that in mind, I think I end up mentioning this often. HYBE has a responsibility to all of Army. I know there are other families, other fandoms under the HYBE label. But they have a responsibility to all of Armies and any events that Armies attend that has to do with the guys. They have a responsibility because Army was the ones that got HYBE to where they are now. HYBE exists because of Army and BTS. So I fully, and this goes back to us being spoiled, I fully always expect the best, the most, the whatever when it comes to these events. This was the line store. The line characters. And the line characters have nothing to do with HYBE. However, it was a BT21 event because it was the days of the concerts. And I feel like HYBE, even though they have nothing to do with the line store, they have everything to do with BT21 characters. They have everything to do with Army, and they should have made accommodations for that event. It was truly an event connected to the LA experience and concert. So they really should have been the ones responsible. Line Store is not responsible for catering to Army. They're not responsible for catering to any person that is there to purchase things. HYBE, however, really should have been.
Secondary to that, we'll speak on this a little bit later. That's connected to the events that happen at the stadium. So let's remember what Buana said about how HYBE has a responsibility to Army, and keep in mind when we mention something later about the actual concerts.
So to provide some more context, like this was all the first day once again. So
we were tired, hungry.
Yeah, when we left the line store, it was like some of us didn't get anything. Some of us had little tiny bags. Some of us had big, huge bags. But all of us were like, I can't believe this is our still first day in LA. All of us, we were getting in the vehicle. We like,
and you know what? I do not regret that experience. Like that was the first time I ever stood in line for hours.
Okay.
For
that
anything.
was your first time,
yeah. And so I don't regret that. I will say I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah,
like, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
I would do it once and that's it. And then on top of that, just so you guys know, our trip was 4 days total, with the 2 middle days being the last 2 concerts of the Permission to Dance series. So you guys kind of know the dates. So we were at the Line Store. We got there in LA November 30th. And the first concert would be the next day, which is day 2 of our trip. But concert number 3 total.
Gotcha.
On December 1st.
Oh, and again, different places, different strokes, But when we first checked into the hotel, we said we need this, and that sent up. We needed more towels. We needed more toilet paper. We needed more blankets. We said that before we left. When we returned, nothing was done. So we said it again, right? And then hours upon hours later, nothing was done. And that happened throughout the entire trip of us being at that hotel.
Wait, let me surmise this way. Lately, like right before the pandemic happened, and the hotels we've stayed in since the pandemic has begun, and even though we're hopefully coming into post-pandemic, a hotel service has been crappy across the board. It didn't matter what city we were staying in. We always are having an issue with hotel service. Now, I don't know if it's because just like healthcare and like a lot of other things, people have lost a lot of staff and a lot of efficient staff. But that has been our experience almost across the board with most places we've been staying at. So that's just crap. People just, I chalk that up to, you just have a crappy staff. And that's been the norm lately.
Because I know what the pandemic did to me. I used to be more proactive than I am now. I'm very lazy. I don't want to do certain things. And at my job, if I'm not already doing it, I don't want to do it. Right? So I think that it could just be, even if they maintained their staff level, they're, as individuals, are probably being affected from the pandemic as well. So I understand not wanting to do more than what you already planned on doing at work.
Yeah.
But we gave them multiple.
But
yeah, and we did in Chicago.
chances.
Chicago, we had some issues like that too. We had issues like that in
that's
Dallas.
for damn sure.
So
We
across
did,
the board,
did.
we and that's
We
all I'm
did.
saying. Across the board, it has been lacking.
And
not
building
just
on
there.
that too, unfortunately, like, this has always kind of been the case. This has been my experience for, like, my personal experience for years before the pandemic. I honestly think that unless a hotel is 4 stars or above, they're not going to think about going above and beyond service.
They don't.
Just culturally, they don't. I mean, we've experienced this in, like, every city we
asking for
visited.
tissue, is that beyond?
Yeah.
No,
service?
but
That's
but
not be-
you have to be on them about
Yeah,
it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
and
That's,
whereas some hotels you don't need to be on.
yeah,
them.
and that's the norm of the staff lately everywhere
Man,
we're
I miss
going.
Chicago.
So that's, I just wanted to sum it up
But
to
yeah,
that as far as our
across the
experience in the
board.
hotel. That's what
The
we're
other
getting
thing
lately.
that I noticed in LA is they have a lot of mentally ill people there.
She's talking about literally out on the streets. She's
Yeah,
not
out
saying
on the
just people in
streets.
general. But
We
Yeah, like
experienced that our first trip. When we went right to a Denny's or something right after the concert, right up the street. We experienced that our first trip. Right after the concert, right up the street, we ran into that issue personally because we were in the same restaurant with an individual who was just not altogether there and was a hindrance in that public situation. And yeah, same thing here. We ran into a lot of situations where we ran across individuals that, but that's, I want to say that that's in big cities because I come from a small town that we had our individuals that we just knew that's how she is, leave her alone, leave her on the street corner, so forth and so on. I think that's almost in any city, but I think you're saying in LA, we ran across that often.
I mean,
often.
and in
There's
LA,
a lot of.
I mean, of course, that there's people on the street everywhere. But in Austin, I will say that I haven't often felt unsafe. But in LA, it was a little scary. I mean, a man literally jumped in front of our shuttle bus on the way to the stadium. Like, just literally jumped in front of it, jumping jack position style, and just was like stop the bus. I mean, that was a little freaky for me.
So combining the 2 points, just like if we go back home, we know who's who and how to deal with certain people. We are from Austin, and then those who are from LA probably was like, oh yeah, he's literally on this corner every day jumping in front of buses.
Yeah.
So every bus knows to stop,
So that was our first day, and then we ate.
Lord,
we ate
finally.
food, and then we went to go
Oh.
try and get some rest because we had things planned for the second
The
day.
first day we got to meet one of your clients, right? Was that the first day?
Yes.
Yes, it
So
was
that
the
was
first
fun.
day. I see everything's a little bit of a blur because we were awake for several hours more than we should have been.
But we got onto the subject of BTS.
Yes, that was actually very nice. So I had a client who lives in LA, and I was meeting him for the first time. And surprisingly, he genuinely asked us about BTS, and so we got a little bit of a nice experience of being able to talk about BTS to someone who was genuine about wanting to hear about them. We talk about sometimes when people ask about BTS, right? Like, you guys know, your friends, family, acquaintances, if they ask about why you're so obsessed with BTS, they're asking, but they're not really asking.
And they're not really listening.
Right? Yeah, and they're not really listening because they have like a certain amount of attention span that they had planned to give you for your explanation when it requires so much more, right? So you know that look that most people get where they just have like a glazed over look in their eyes, and and you
yes,
don't
every
get
time.
to tell
They're
them
looking
everything
through you
need
and-
to.
yeah.
They look
Because
like
they don't get
crazy.
it.
And then
It's
you're
just
like,
because they don't get
why
it.
am I even explaining this to you? Why did we start this conversation?
Yes, but it was nice because my client was genuinely interested.
He
so
was.
we got to get a really good experience of fully, at least an introduction of fully explaining
Yeah, exactly.
our
And that-
relationship
Did
with
you
the
ever send him that playlist?
it's been back for a week, Mimi.
And she had a busy week.
She's going to send him a playlist because he was like
I
she
should think
said,
about
he
this
was
playlist.
genuinely interested. And then when we died down on the conversation as far as while we were in LA, the concert and BTS itself and all the history behind it, he would pause and he would stop and look at each one of us and he would ask another question BTS related. So he was genuinely interested
was.
in
It was
not just the
refreshing.
music.
It was very refreshing.
Yeah, not just the music, but the history of them and so forth and so on. And yeah,
And we got to on the point about the kind of people the boys are. He genuinely was like, "Oh, I respect that. I appreciate that."
And I
That's
really,
good."
really like that he didn't just kind of think, oh, they're just a boy band. And
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You know,
And
just-
these are girls, so they just, you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
And just like roll his eyes. I really like, I feel like that was very cathartic because
Yeah.
it's so rare. It's so rare
from the normal
that someone doesn't just roll their eyes at you
Yeah.
as soon as they see the boys, as soon as they hear the boys, and they just put put BTS in a box.
Yeah.
And they
Yep.
put you in a box
Yep.
as a fan.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think also when we first started the conversation with this individual, he genuinely, you know how we say, if you don't know who BTS is or heard of ARMY by now, you live under a rock. Jared was living half of him under a rock and the other half wasn't, because he genuinely did not know who we were talking about. Did not know who BTS was, did not know who ARMY was. He genuinely did not know everything, the entire movement last year during Black Lives Matter, during the election, the power, the strength behind ARMY, and the effect that the changes that ARMY made,
just
so forth
didn't
and so
know.
on. He just didn't know. But then as we got further into the conversation, he was like, "Hold on, wait a minute. I think I know who you're referring to now." So anyway, yeah, I think that helped that he didn't have preconceived anything going into the conversation. So that helped. That was refreshing too.
And then honestly, this trip is halfway a blur for me. The second day was the concert.
Yes, the first concert. And we'll, again,
There
in
were
the
a
next...
ton of ARMY in our hotels too, by the way.
Yeah.
A ton of ARMY.
And just so you guys know, again, like our next episode is when we'll go into depth about the specific concerts, because there's a lot to say about, our time with the boys in particular.
So yeah, we're just kind of over doing an overview of our experience in LA, our experience with the travel.
I think it's SoFi time.
So forth
I
and so
think
on.
it
Yeah.
is. Now-
so moving forward to SoFi.
We of course start every day with Starbucks when we travel, because life is hard, and we be waking up. So we went to Starbucks and we dealt with that, and then 9 people had to hustle, get ready, and head out. I can't remember if we did anything between the hotel and actually heading out
Day
for the
one
concert.
was the merch.
Yeah.
Was merch,
we wanted to get some
and we
merch.
were prepared for that as much as we could be, going by what ARMY had been putting out there for us.
Yes.
And we expected a wait like the Lion Store the day before. However, we were all in agreement that nobody wanted to do that same wait we had done the previous day at the Lion Store.
Okay.
So yeah, so we divided. We decided to divide and conquer because not everybody needed stuff from the merch lines. I think there were 4 people that specifically wanted to get their bombs at the concert, needed them, so forth and so on. But we knew from previous concerts that Big Hit had already set it up, and PD&E had already set up the concert going experience to be a little bit more organized, despite what was told and all the experiences everybody had on Twitter and other platforms saying how it was. We knew for bombs specifically, it was a whole separate line. So we knew there's a whole separate line. We're going to jump in that line, so forth and so on, which it was great. That was great because it was a shorter line. It was a different experience. Prior to going, we met somebody.
After we got a Starbucks and we went back to the hotel and chilled and regathered ourselves, ARMY, 2 sister ARMYs came down. They were in the hotel lobby with us, and for some reason, somehow we just connected. Their mom was with them, and we were just chatting it up. And she described to us, first of all, their flight had been extended. So they went to the first weekend of concerts.
Their flight had been extended because what? Because they were from
Zimbabwe.
They had come from Zimbabwe for this.
They were all the way from Zimbabwe. We met so many Army that were international, but go ahead.
So their flight was extended, and they had managed to stay in the hotel while we were there, and we just connected, and they discussed the fact that they were in the merch line. And the mama, which she really likes, Kim Namjoon, the mama was like, yeah, we went in there, and I told them, so I have my disability paper right here. I can't wait in this line for this long. And she told us about her experience, and she was like, yeah, if you have anything, you know what, just go straight to the beginning of the line and say this, and that. Because she was looking out for us. She was a good home skillet biscuit. She was looking out for us.
She was.
And then I just made a sideways comment and said, can we use your disability card? And she took me seriously. So I told her a sideways comment. I was like, can we use your disability card? And she took me seriously and said, you know, why don't you just go up to the, because it wasn't fully organized, just go up to the front of the line and say, hey, I'm looking for this and I want that. And then they'll just simply direct you, yeah, just go to this line, just go over here. So she gave us an insight on how it was in the field. She told us what it was like in the field. I was like, yo, thank you for good looking out. Okay, so all we're going to do is when we get there, we're going to go straight to someone and say, we want this, we want that, we want this. And where do we go? That's where Miyako was able to experience a little.
Yes.
Because we got through the bomb line quickly, like we expected to.
We did.
And then it was trying to get to the merch line. And the merch line was exactly like you have been seeing on all the social networking, all the social networking platforms, social media platforms, excuse me.
It doesn't matter.
It was crowded. It was crowded. It looked ridiculous. But it was honestly the same crowd we saw at the last ones, you know? It was, you know, an amusement park kind of line.
It was about 1,000 people in line.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to wait off to the side. You guys, so 2 people went one way, 2 people went another way. And I could see Mimi and Tink. I could see them, and I watched them go up to somebody, and they talked with them for quite some time. So I called, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And she said, hey, Mimi is talking to him about, you know, if we can't wait in this line, you know, where's the area that you would go to if you have a disability, so forth and so on. And Mimi, he said.
So I ran into the security guy, and I was like, hey, what, like, if you can't stand in this line for long, is there any accommodations? Is there anything that...
Because remember, guys, I told you some people in our group can't be standing in lines for forever.
No, we truly did have 2 people, I would say, in our group that had disabilities.
Well, who could not stand in line, physically stand in line for hours upon hours. And remember, I told you earlier in the podcast that Bawana mentioned how it is Big Hit's responsibility to Army to make accommodations for certain things. So Mako is going to explain a discussion that she had with a Big Hit employee.
So the guy, when I talked to the security guy, he said, no, we don't have accommodations for that kind of stuff.
This was a Sofi security guy.
This was a Sofi security employee. I was like, what? He was like, we don't do accommodations. You just got to stand in line like everybody else. I was like, so if anyone has a disability, you mean to tell me that there is absolutely 0 accommodations for them? And he said, yeah, we don't do no accommodations for nobody. I was like, can I speak to your supervisor, please? I had to go supervisor him. He said, you don't need to talk to my supervisor. He gonna tell you the exact same thing. I said, well, then I need to hear him tell me the exact same thing. Because that's just unbelievable that you don't have accommodations for people who can't do what other people do. That just doesn't make sense to me. So he was like, all right. So he goes off. He brings this other person to me. And then the other person tells me, oh, no, we don't have any control over merchandise and the lines. We're just security. He was like, but I can get a person who's over at merchandise for you, and then maybe he can help you better understand, or maybe he can tell you about the accommodations. I was like, okay, well, I would like to speak with him. So 5 minutes later, 5 minutes pass, and up walks 2 people. One is a male and one is a female. And the female didn't really interact with me as much as the male did. I'm not sure if she didn't interact with me. When they were communicating back and forth, they spoke Korean. And so then I spoke Korean, introducing myself to him. And then I said, hey, I was like, do you have any accommodations for any type of accommodations for people with any type of disabilities? And he said, no, no, we don't. He was like, when we notified SoFi Stadium, we had several requirements that
this is a Big Hit employee.
Correct.
A Hive employee.
A Hive employee. He said we had several things that we wanted them to do, and they didn't even do half of it.
Half of our requirements.
Half of their requirements. He said that's kind of why everything is so crazy.
He said specifically he was really frustrated. Right?
Yeah, he did. Because when he told me no at first, he was like, no, we don't have anything for anybody with disabilities. And I was like, you guys got to do better. And he was like, I'm so frustrated. He was like, because when we sent SoFi Stadium the information as far as what the requirements were, what we would need, how we would need them to do it, they didn't even do half of it. And that's kind of why everything is so haywire. He was like, but give me a minute and I'll get back to you. So he's talking back and forth with this other female, but then he walks off and then he comes back like maybe 3 minutes later and he says, okay, we have another merch line opening up at gate 1. He said, so if you go this way, that way, this way.
Which was completely around.
The other side of the entire
building.
stadium.
Yeah, it really was. He was like, there's like 30 people in line. So I'm looking at this line of 1,000 some people, and he's telling me there's 30 people in this other line. I said, okay. And I was a little mad at myself because I didn't get his name, because had we walked all the way around to gate 1 and these people were like, oh no, this is for VIP or this is for, I was going to tell them, hey, such and such said blah, blah, blah. But sure enough, it was as he said it would. It was as he said it would be. And when we got there were hardly any people in line. And this was a merch booth. It had everything that the other merch booth at the very front of the stadium had. Everything.
And on top of that, when we finally got there, and it took us quite some time to get from one end of that stadium all the way completely around it to the other. When we finally got there, not only was there a merch set up right there, a merch truck set up right there, like a few paces down within vision of us, there was another one set up that had very short lines. So the point is, in the very front where all the merch was, everybody was up there. But there was no organization to the entire event for them to say, hey, we not only have a big merch line here, but we are opening up. There should have been signs. Merch this way, keep going to gate 8. There's another booth this way, so forth and so on. And that would have dispensed people out. And it would have been more organized that way. But they did not have that. And I'm thinking that's one of the requirements that maybe he was talking about.
Mm. Okay, so before we move forward with that, there's some foreshadowing and some points here. A couple of points are the fact that Big Hit, and I refuse to call them Hive, Big Hit tried to make accommodations for Army at the stadium. I think, my personal belief is the reason they still went, because we have the power to say either you want us at your stadium or we'll choose someplace else. We do have that power. I think they chose to stay at SoFi because they were like, no, we're not. We told Army this. We're not changing it. We can't do this to them again. They moved forward for our sake. And the boys were like, no, just get us out there to be with our Army. So that might, in my opinion, might be the reason why they still continued, even though they did not meet the standards that were set.
Well, I firmly believe they didn't know it wasn't going to be met until it actually started happening.
Until they got there.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Another point is the fact that foreshadowing, Miyaka had to ask 3 different people, technically 4 different people, about the same exact question and got just no direction until the last person.
Here's the point about that. And we pass things on to you guys as we learn them to kind of help. The point about that for me is don't stop. Don't stop. I mean, if you need something, you need information, you need understanding, don't stop with just one person, which is what you did.
And don't take their word as gospel, because you'll hear more examples of this kind of thing as we tell you about the rest of the trip.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. The fact that Miyaka had to ask multiple people the same question until she got something that made sense. So Armies, whenever you go, I don't care if you've been here before, because we've been to LA before, so we kind of knew a little bit. But when you go anywhere for this, ask questions to more than one. If it doesn't make sense, if the answer does not make sense, like you don't have accommodations for people with disabilities, that's just hazardous. That should be against the law. Continue to ask questions. And don't just follow the herd. Don't just follow the crowd. Because naturally, you arrive at the front gate. You see where everybody is. They're in line. They're getting what they're supposed to be getting. Naturally, you fall into line. But if you have questions, if there's no organization anywhere, ask the questions. Something Miyaka tried to do on her way back from that merch line was
tell other Army that there's merch at a different gate. So there were tons of people in that same line at the very front of the entrance. And as many Army as I saw, I tried to tell them, hey, you don't need to stand in this long line. You can go to gate 1. They have the exact same stuff, merch. Go there. They didn't believe me.
And I think one of the points of not believing you is because they, like you said, they didn't want to lose their spot. But the other thing was, actual individuals who was running the event should have been the ones letting people know we have lines opening up over here, so forth and so on. And because it wasn't coming from somebody with any kind of authority, it's coming from you, lady. I'm not losing my place in line because nobody that's running this event has actually said that. I'm not going to go all the way around. So yeah, again, they should have been the ones better organized and letting individuals know so the lines could then.
But with a mindset like that, it does make sense. You don't want to lose your place in line. You can't just trust the word of a random person who might very well want to take your spot in line. That's why we travel in groups. Yeah. You send someone out to go see, hey, peep this out, and then come back and let us know if we need to come over there.
So we were in Merchville for less than an hour, I think.
Yeah, we got everything we wanted within less than an hour.
And which was slim pickings.
But wait, let me tell you. This line that was it had 1,000 people in it. The sun was out. It was hot. There was somebody who actually passed out in line. Mm-hmm. I know this because while I was talking to security, a lady just jumps up in our conversation and she says, hey, somebody passed out over there. She was standing and then all of a sudden she just passed out. And so, of course, he had to leave me because he had to go get some, I guess, medical people, and then they had to go help her. That's how hot and long that line was. That, to me, is 100% unacceptable. If people are in line for so long that they're passing out, that's a problem.
Yeah. It's unacceptable for me. The biggest reason is because you are Hive and we are Army. And this is BTS. And you guys owe everything to us. So as Mimi told the man, you guys have to do a better job. I understand frustration because there were some things that were not met. But when you run into that, you as a Hive employee should have the resources to get it right.
Fix it
right there
fix
on
it
the
on
spot.
The fly, yeah.
Because
Hive stations,
Hive has a gazillion dollars. Hive has a gazillion dollars on the backs of us. So you get there and you see shit is not right. You should have the resources to be able to fix it. And
they could have paid for their own things like water stations.
Exactly.
Like, even if they only had a limited amount of chairs.
So Hive US, get your together. Because this was an awful experience for armies from around the world. So it was not good at all.
So they literally took 10 steps back. The experience that these armies had was stuff we used to experience years ago.
Yeah.
Years ago.
Now, let me say this. We are coming out of pandemic. We are. And we're all trying to get back into the flow of things. That is true. But I'm going back to dollar signs, to won signs. You guys have a gazillion dollars. You have resources and money to actually fix what is broken at that time. So I understand we're coming out of pandemic and still trying to get used. And this is our first run out of the gate. I'm still go back to a gazillion dollars.
Yeah, and this is just a quick note because we're going to get more into like detail once we go in chronological order. But there were even a few times where I truly, maybe not fully unsafe was the word is how I felt, but I did not feel right. And I've never had that feeling before while with Army, to be honest. And
so
part of it, mm-hmm. I have something to say about Army in general, but mm-hmm. part of it is also just, the logistics didn't help, mm-hmm. right? Because, part of the having tons of crowds and stuff like that, Army or not, like, I just found it so crazy that not all of the staff, and there wasn't enough, and not all of the staff already seem to care first about human well-being, because there's like some true safety hazards that occurred even when we were trying to get in. Like people should not have been able to push on one another. People should not have been able to get to the level of rowdiness that they did. And notes of Army, the scary thing about us getting so big and growing so fast, and in my opinion a little too fast, is a lot of our original Army culture, of course, is always going to be there. You know, we are Army strong, but some of it did get lost. And I really experienced that when we were in one of the lines just to get into the stadium. I honestly was taken out of reality for a moment when I actually heard a man in line yell push.
So before we
were
go
in line
to the evening part of the concert where all of that happened, take a few steps back, and just like we hold Big Hit to standards on how they treat us, I hold Army to a standard on how we treat Army. We're capable. We have shown in the past that we're very capable of organizing certain things. Granted, as human beings thrown into chaos, something that was just Sofi provided chaos for this entire situation. They provided nothing but chaos. And as human beings being thrown into chaos, you react with chaos. But as Army, because we have experience dealing with certain things and organizing certain things, after reports of the first weekend of the concerts, we should have done better. We should have gotten ourselves in more organized lines. We should have guided one another. We should have exactly what Miyaka did for those thousands of Army standing in line. Hey guys, go to the other side because there are empty lines. Or just like that Army that we met in the hotel who said, hey, yeah, go forward.
They were
and
great
ask
examples,
questions.
yes.
Those are two examples of just two individuals. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of plus Army at this event. We have shown ourselves to be capable of organizing ourselves better than other people can organize us. And we need to do that the next go round.
I think because...
Yeah, and exactly what Zoe said, I didn't expect it to be perfect because, this is crazy. This is the first time we're seeing the boys throughout the pandemic. I truly understand if people are not fully in their right minds. But I will say that even though we were all really stressed out and hectic, I never once had even the thought to physically try to push another Army, to try to get in front of someone, to try to undercut something so that I could get ahead, to disrespect someone, or to put anyone in any situation where they could be hurt. It really did scare me to hear. And it could have not been an Army.
So not only did he say it, but it happened.
Yes, he yelled push, and I was in that crowd. People pushed, and that was really scary. And that was on top of that. Another woman was already causing a lot of conflict behind me. She was yelling about people cutting in front of her and trying to get security and yelling in people's faces. And I can understand if you're frustrated about that. I do not understand getting in someone's face. I don't understand getting so hostile about it when we're all going to assign seats in the stadium. And that's just not the way that I have known Army to handle situations ever. And that was behind me, and that was really close to us. So that was already scary. And then in terms of the actual pushing, we actually got separated for some time in line because of that pushing.
Yeah, so when that pushing happened, I was in the middle.
Yeah.
And I was the one caught between trying to hold on to whoever I was trying to hold on to and then keep a hold to you, to the point where I was being stretched.
Yes, I saw Mimi was getting pulled between, the front and back of our group. And then for me, there was a mother and daughter to the left of me who I was at first standing comfortably next to, and someone all the way to the right of us was pushing in response to that guy, and it pushed the whole crowd, including Army who weren't trying to push. It pushed the whole crowd, and this mother and daughter got separated, and they were getting really scared, and I had to move so that they can get back together. We had to try to get our group back together, and that's just not how Army operates. It's just not. My final thoughts on that is not just, Army does need to do better in that. And I'm not saying if you're not Army, you're not held responsible to that, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think that man was Army who yelled push. I really don't. But it extends to friends of Army. Like, if you're an Army and you're bringing someone who's not Army to this concert, you have a responsibility also to tell them, I don't know how you act in your other places, but while you're here with Army, we have some rules that we adhere to, and we always respect each other, and that's just not going to fly. I'm almost ashamed for whoever brought that person to this concert who didn't keep him in check from doing that.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of what you said. I didn't, because my experience walking away from SoFi was just so bitter in my mouth because of the SoFi stadium and employees itself. I did not take a lot of time within myself to think about how armies are responsible. I know before in our last podcast, we did admonish armies, make sure you're being safe, make sure your Army strong, make sure you look after one another, and you stay helpful and organized in the city of LA, and let's show them how we behave. But then after the experience itself, my entire being was so upset with the SoFi experience and was not really thinking about armies. We should have done better. And you gave a glaring realization, which is our culture is still there in some respects, but because we have so many different personalities now within Army, within our family, so many different personalities and types of individuals, that culture is becoming convoluted. That culture is slacking and lacking, and this past concert experience was a great example of that. So you're absolutely right about we have got to do better. We have got to do better as far as Army is concerned. SoFi itself, you're going to hear a lot of people talking about the SoFi experience was just, and we already have, it was just not what anybody should experience. If it continues this way with the concert going experience here in the States or anywhere in the world, we are going to end up having a huge problem. We will end up having an incident, not a near incident, which is what this concert experience was. This concert was a near incident as far as this could have shown a very bad light on Army and BTS as a whole. If someone had died, a trampling had happened, so forth and so on. Or if Army just started to just go berserk because SoFi employees were just not up to par at all. So in a lot of different ways, it could have gone sideways, but it did not. This was a near tragedy. But if it continues this way, if armies don't pull it together, if the facilities that host us does not pull it together and changes aren't made, especially HYBE, you have the power to make those changes and pay attention from this experience, we're going to have a huge incident that is going to reflect really bad throughout the world on BTS and Army. And we are so blessed that in our almost 8 years of being a family and coming together, we have not had a huge mark on our family. We haven't, but it will happen if we do not pull that together. I'm going to say real quickly about SoFi experience and the employees there. Oh my God, work ethic. I brought myself up under work ethic. I taught my children work ethics. We as a community, the four of us, we have work ethics. These people had no work ethic. I don't know if they were just going about it blindly with no guidance, no organization, no anything, but they just had no work ethic as far as their work it was concerned. And as far as humankind was concerned, if you're working with the public, there's a certain person that it takes within you to work with the public, and these people didn't have it. They didn't have it in spades. It was confusing. There was no answer. The experience at the merch area that day was a great precursor to what we were going to experience from the employees at SoFi, period. Half of them didn't know anything, and what they didn't know, they made up.
Literally.
So
Which is
it-
dangerous.
It's
Literally.
dangerous. It definitely gave you the wrong information. It spun you around in circles. It was just not a good experience or a safe experience at all. They made some decisions like shutting down an escalator that would lead hundreds of individuals to the section that they needed to go on the other side of the stadium. They made decisions like shutting down that escalator and letting 4 and 5 people on at a time and rechecking their COVID bracelets and rechecking their tickets. This was after we had already gone through 2 checkpoints. And that caused a huge confusion within the stadium itself after you get in.
They traffic jammed right when you get in, and that is dangerous.
That is
is
very
where they
dangerous.
cause this traffic jam. I could understand if they tried to check it again somewhere else, but they specifically caused a humongous jam right at the entrance when people are flooding in and everybody's getting confused. And imagine you're already in the stadium at this point and you're still getting thrown around in this flood of people because of that.
Because of a decision that Sofi employees made to shut down something and then start letting people through a few at a time. That just was not a smart thing. Again, that goes to disorganization. That's what I'm walking away with. And yeah, we got to do better. And it starts, honestly, with HYBE. I'm going to go back to that. It starts with HYBE. Please learn from this experience. Please learn from this experience. And armies, if any of you guys listen to us and have been listening to us, you know we're always going to push. You have better take care of one another. And when you see this other culture peeking its head up of individuals that just don't have our standards within our family, say something about it. Be kind about it, but say something about it. Be that effect. Be that positive effect.
So from on the first day of the concert, when we went in, there was a crowd with no organization. Everyone was in a line, but no one knew if it was the correct line or where to go or what to do or how to do it. So eventually our crew just decided we're just going to get into a line. We're going to stay here and then move forward when people move forward. The first day of the concert, we got in fairly fast. They did not do a thorough check of us at the checkpoint where they check your ticket and your vaccination and your bags. They didn't do a thorough check at all because I got in without a vaccination bracelet. I had my card on me, but it was under my shirt. No one asked me for it, not a single time. So they didn't do a thorough check. When we finally got in, we went to 2 different doors before someone finally said, no, you're going to have to go to this door for your level. And I had asked 3 people the same question with different answers. We finally got in, and we finally found our sections. We dropped each other off. We found our spots. The SoFi Stadium, physically, the structure itself is very nice. They built up instead of out, so it was really high. You got to see Army all around you. They have eating sections
on every level,
separated from the seats, and you don't have to be VIP to go into those eating sections. So it was nice once you got in, found your seat, and you could actually breathe without people on your shoulder. That was the first day, but I was still worried about the second day because of what I saw on the first day. The second day is when the pushing happened, when we tried to do the same method of we're just going to put ourselves somewhere and move forward when other people move forward. When we did that, people were shouting, push. People pushed. I got squashed so much to the point to where I couldn't breathe. There were many small people near me, full-grown adults, but small in stature, who almost fell, and we had to help pull up. A lot of people who were Army, I know for a fact because of how they acted and because they had all of the galore on them, let me and some of my crew through in front of them because we couldn't breathe, because we were being pushed. So that is the kind of culture that we are used to for Army, not the certain individual who said push and shouted for everyone to push and for those people who pushed. So that was nice to have someone actually give up their space in line so that we can walk ahead of them and breathe. Because, hey, we had assigned seats. So when we were finally getting through the line and the gated section actually tried its best to organize us, a security lady was walking through that gated section and only that gated section to separate the line into 2 so that she had a walkway between us. Did she exit the gated section where it was organized to help organize the people who were in a herd pushing? No, she did not. She shouted at people in the gated section who were already organized and not pushing, and then walked back to her stand at the check-in point. Check-in point, they were, on one section, they were so unthorough that they didn't check anything. They just started letting people in. They just said, you know what, just go, just go, just go, just go. In another section, which was our section, they were so overly thorough that Bawana's bomb and
My phone.
and her phone fell out of the security guard. Now, what you gonna do as an Army and you see your bomb fall out of someone's hand who is not yours? That's just disrespectful on a whole nother level. So security, it was not the same across board, and it was pretty pathetic and very unsafe. So from the get-go, you felt unsafe for a number of reasons. Once you're finally in, it took us almost to the point of when the concert started to find our section, not our seats, our section. We literally walked around the entire stadium asking questions, asking for help. Again, an instance where you say the same question to 10 different people, only this time it was different answers each time. Once they did tell us they shut down a escalator. They shut down the stairwells, and everyone was supposedly forced to take the elevator. That pushed me over the edge, and I started yelling at them about how that is hazardous, even if there is no emergency, because people are already pushing. If all we have to use is an elevator, that should be illegal in itself.
There's 55,000 people
It's
in this freaking
100%
facility.
dangerous. So that pissed me off. We finally move forward. We find stairs that were open because the last person who told us that they were closed lied. We were going up the stairs, and Bawana spotted an escalator that was working because the person before that last person lied. So we ran and raced to get to that escalator. Someone tried to turn us away because they said something about, I don't know what the reason was. I was pissed off at this point.
You guys have to go to the end of the line. All these people have been waiting in this line for hours. Now, mind you, that was inside the stadium after we have gone through all the checks. And when she said that, I said,
So
lady, we've been here
didn't-
also. We're not going to the back.
She didn't have an opportunity to put up a fight because how dare she tell us at this point to turn away? We did not turn away. We proceeded forward. She didn't even put up a fight because she knew she would lose. So we proceeded forward. We made it down the escalator. Rewind a few steps back. The day before the first concert, they told us you had to go up, over, and down to get to our section, which just doesn't make sense. Think about it. We were on the level we needed to be. We needed to go up, go over, to go down. Didn't make sense. So just equate that across the board for the entire concert experience. We finally get to our level that we needed to be on, but we entered through the VIP section. One wonderful human being who actually had some sense and kindness about him said, no, don't turn around. Just go ahead and come through the VIP section, walk around the stairs or the chairs where the seats were actually at. Walk around it. You'll eventually get to your seat. We could breathe. We could see. And Lord, we finally found our seats. So he was actually the only person in that entire situation that was helpful. The bottom line for me is that it was unsafe for you tell someone that the stairs and the escalator are not available when they are. Everyone's going to go to the elevator. That's unsafe for a number of reasons. You are educated people. You know why. So it was unsafe. It was unorganized. It was
dangerous.
It was dangerous. It was inconsiderate to other people as human beings. And I am spoiled as Army, so I expected the VIP treatment. I got the you are worthless and don't
this
matter.
wasn't some rinky-dink facility. This is the brand new SoFi Stadium. I don't know how true it is, but I've heard from some sources that it's the most expensive stadium ever built, and the facilities themselves were beautiful. So what the hell was everything else?
And LA is extremely proud of this stadium.
They really are.
And the stadium is beautiful. Aesthetically, it is
was fantastic. It could have been
No,
perfect.
I think I will disagree with you in the fact that whoever built that, they did build up instead of out. But you constantly had to go up to go down. You constantly had to go up to go down. So there were some things architecturally that just didn't make sense about the building. Because even when they give you the exit information on how to leave in case of an emergency, of course, it was always to go up to go out. Like you had to go up to go down. So
In actual emergency too, that would be unsafe.
I was
to do.
actually before the concert started and I got distracted by the boys. I was very scared on if an emergency did break out, because I was even more terrified for the people who were at the very top.
Yeah.
They literally had to go down to go up, to go down to exit, and just getting in on a supposedly calm, non-emergency day. People were pushing. People couldn't breathe, and they were falling down and being stepped on.
Yeah.
If an emergency happens at SoFi Stadium,
God forbid,
trauma will occur.
Huge tragedy. Huge. Mm-mm. So my final statement is very simple. SoFi and Hive, you've got to do better. That's it.
Oh, and we ain't never going back to LA.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, we decided that we were halfway through the trip. We were
I think after day one, at the end of day one, we said we're not gonna do LA again.
Yeah, I mean seriously, and to me that is so crazy because I know, and to be fair, I know the boys say this publicly, so I don't know how true that really, really is in their hearts. But I know that they love going to LA and they love visiting places. And given again, our boys are superstars, so you know what? They are having this superstar package in LA, and we're having the middle class experience in LA.
We got economy.
Yeah, maybe it would have been different
package.
if we came in on our private jet and our private airport in a 5-star hotel and
Although
everything.
Namjoon is Namjooning where we are.
That is true. That is true.
He is Namjooning in
But
Texas.
yeah, that was our experience in terms of the trip and SoFi, and that is our feedback to SoFi. And I've got a long letter to write to SoFi. I'm still working on.
Yeah, the review any Army who went to SoFi.
You
should
better
have
give that
received
feedback.
An email
You better give that
for
feedback.
Give the feedback. Give the honest
Absolutely.
feedback.
Yeah, because they've lost 4 people.
It's
Just
dangerous.
us. I
And
I
they
can't
better
imagine
not.
anybody in their right minds
Who would go back?
who would go back.
They better not go back to SoFi next time they come to LA.
It should be vacant. That place is extremely dangerous.
Yes, but next episode will just be
It'll be better. We'll
the
be
great
happier.
stuff about the actual concert with the boys and nothing else.
So many international army were there, though.
Yes.
I didn't realize that
Me neither.
that was open to
It made me
Worldwide
realize
Army.
it's even more miraculous that we got tickets.
Yeah, because I had no idea.
Me neither. I thought that it wasn't. We've mentioned in our podcast, I thought it was specifically closed to everyone but the U.S. But I guess I was
Canada,
wrong.
U.S. and Canada.
Yeah, but
No, we had people from every walk, of every country.
that was an overview of our 4 days over there, and this was a long time. But I think you can get the gist. But with that, now you know Army. Thanks for listening, you guys. We'll see you in
Appreciate
the next
it.
one. Bye.
Bye.